A warm welcome to all who have already joined us as we begin the first of three panel discussions in the 2021 edition of the Kwamituri Memorial Lecture Series. I'm Dr. Claudius Fergus, coordinator of the lecture series. We launched the series 2 weeks ago with a fascinating lecture by political scientist, Professor Emeritus Rupert Lewis, and his lecture was entitled 100 Years, from Marcus Garvey to Black Lives Matter. The entire launch session is still available on the Emancipation Support Committee's website and Facebook. I suggest that you go there and check it out and share it as well. And you get not only the lecture, but his interaction with the audience, which will also be part of this evening's panel. All our panels in this year's lecture series embrace the theme of this year's Pan-African Festival, which is Advancing Pan-African Solidarity Towards a Balanced World. They also fit into the African Union's declaration of 2021 as the African Union Year of the Arts, Culture, and Heritage, levers for building the Africa we want. Indeed, this year's Kwamituri Memorial Lecture Series is a collaborative effort of ECOSOC, that is the Economic, Social, and Cultural Committee, the Civil Society Coordinating Committee of the African Union, and the Emancipation Support Committee of Trinidad and Tobago. Your moderator for this panel is Sister Attila Springer, and she hails from Trinidad and Tobago. Sister Attila is a writer, communications professional, cultural worker, an activist, and a DJ as well, which is very important, as all of us would agree, to the development and promotion of the music industry. So let's welcome Sister Attila Springer to take us through the rest of the program for this afternoon.
Good afternoon and welcome to the first virtual panel discussion as part of the Kwamituri Memorial Lecture Series. And thank you so much, Professor Fergus, for that warm welcome. And this series is being hosted by the Emancipation Support Committee. And we open with that classic track from Gay Flamingos, now known as the Mighty, Mighty Exodus, playing Black Man's Cry by, of course, the immortal beloved Fela Anikulapo Kuti. And what better way to begin a conversation about music and Pan-African solidarity than with a song played by Fela, played on the steel pan, which is one of the ultimate symbols of the survival and transformation of this rhythm, sound, and soul of Africa in the diaspora. What would we be without music, without the work songs that became the fight songs of Calendar, giving birth to the Chantwell, who then became and made way for the Caixonian? What would we be without the call and response of the Orisha Yard, without the distant drum bouncing on the laughter of a melody? What would we be without storytelling of hip hop, without Nina and Miles and Billy and Otis wailing our pain, without Peter Tosh and Kendrick Lamar's defiance, without Franco's sweet guitar licks, without a sweaty dark room to dance out our frustration, the bass so loud that it live in your chest for a few days after. The theme of today's discussion is music no get enemy, rhythm, sound, and soul as tools for Pan-African solidarity. And to help us explore some of these ideas, I'm very pleased to have with me today Dr. Kayla Naka Francis, Assistant Professor at the Academy for Arts and Culture and the Performing Arts at the University of Trinidad and Tobago. King David Michael Rudder, Venerable Calypsonian, quintessential lyricsman, and one of a handful of people who I know who still take heartache to watch the West Indies cricket team. Also joining me, we have Rocky Dawuni, Grammy-nominated singer-songwriter and producer from Ghana, who is joining us today from Los Angeles. We also have Wendell Manwaran, Rapsoman, producer, actor, educator, and leader of a 10,000-strong Juve army. And last but not least, we have Matthew Tembo, who is a musician, cultural ambassador, and music ambassador, who is joining us tonight from Zambia. So welcome, brothers and one sister, one woman on each side. We're going to jump straight into the questions. And our first question is, what does Pan-African solidarity mean to you? In your respective fields, what has been your first-hand experience of Pan-African solidarity? I'll start with the one woman on the side.
Of course. I like to explain Pan-Africanism with an anecdote that happened to me. The first time I marched for emancipation was in 2009. And you're enjoying it, you're marching. I read Touré, I read James, you've been doing all your reading, you're studying. This was after undergrad. And I'm marching down in Port of Spain, and I turn and I see this woman in a mint green gown with a burgundy gilly. And I was like, where am I? Because I felt like I was in Lagos, in Addis Ababa, in Accra, in Kinshasa. I could keep calling Johannesburg. I felt like I was not in Trinidad, but I was in Trinidad at the same time. Because when I looked past her, I saw shops that I knew. I saw people who looked very Trinidadian. And it made Pan-Africanism very real to me. Because it's a matter of recognition. It's not a matter of sameness. It's not homogeneity. It's that there is something in you that I have, that I vibrate with, that helps to explain why I do what I do. In terms of my work, I'm a carnivalist. I also am very interested in African secular rituals, or I should say African rituals in secular spaces, which is one of the reasons I am a carnivalist. And so really reading Soyinka and Kiongo and all these thinkers from Africa and then applying it to what I see around me, I go, that makes sense. And so it's a way of seeing the world, reawakening that African worldview that's buried in us that we don't always acknowledge.
Nice. Okay, so I bring in the lyrics man now to share with us some of his experiences as a musician, as a performer, somebody who sang a line that I feel like some musician somewhere in the world needs to do a whole thesis on, which is Ileife, she make me to understand. But that's for another discussion. David.
Greetings, everyone. my first experience of Pan-African solidarity was growing up in the 70s in Trinidad. And we used to have these big parties. It used to be big in those days, but not compared to ones we have right now. But what hit me was the fact that a lot of these parties were, the music that was played was music out of Africa, especially Fela, Africa 70, and so on. And everybody would be singing Lady and Carry Me I Want to Die and Sorrow, Tears and Blood and everything else. And I remember when Fela passed, there was one of his girlfriends, American girlfriend called Sandra Isidore. She was saying that the first person who brought Fela as a band out to the United States was a lady called Rose from Trinidad, Calypso Rose. Because she used to say, that's the fellow who does song like James Brown, you know? And so Rose also tuned into what was happening in Trinidad and the parties too, you know? And that kind of hit me. But what was even more poignant is this, Trinidad was like the point, the departure point for the music to get big in the States and the rest of the world. It's a hit first. We hear it first for some strange reason. And I remember there was a DJ from a Trinidadian DJ called Arnold Henry, who took Soul Makossa by Manu Dibango up to New York. He used to work at WLIB also in New York. And Frankie Crocker, who was in WBLS, the sister station, he was the #1 DJ in America. If Frankie played a tune, it's gone. And Arnold Henry took Soul Makossa up to New York. And Frankie heard it, and the rest was history. Now a whole generation or two will pass, and they don't know what's going on with that. But suddenly, you hear Michael Jackson singing the same thing, "Mama say, Mama sa, Mama kosa," and they think that's Michael Jackson's song. So I said, no, that is Manu Dibango. And they said, who is that? And then I'll go and play Manu Dibango from 20, 30 years prior. And they said, oh, so the connections were going forward and backward. You know, and I always feel very proud that, to me, all these magical things happen out of Trinidad.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to bring in Matthew here to talk about your experiences both on the continent as a Zambian and also as somebody who lives and studies in the US. What has your experience of Pan-African solidarity been? Okay, we lost him. I think that Matthew's connection is giving us a little bit of trouble. So I will go to Rocky, as somebody who also straddles the two continents. Yes. What has your experience been?
Well, for me, first of all, being from Ghana and growing up also in a traditional African family, my grandfather was a traditional chief, my father was a chief. And also my older brother right now is a chief. So I grew up in really the traditions of Africa. And for me too, being painfully aware of what our history has been, you know, in terms of from the 16th century, you know, as, you know, Africa as one whole, you know, brothers and sisters together, history cannot really, you know, split us apart. Through circumstances, some of our brothers and sisters were taken away and relocated in other parts of the world. And during our independence movement, when we had an opportunity to reclaim this, you know, which Ghana was also very honored, or shall I say chosen, if we look at it in a much more bigger sense, to be the first Black African country to reign back independence. Our first president, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, who had actually lived in America and studied and been inspired by, you know, the movements of Marcus Garvey and studied all the leaders of Pan-Africanism, whose messages was not being distilled to Africa because that knowledge was prevented from coming back. But he brought all of those in forming the foundations of the first nation that was Black, that was independent, that was also a vision for moving Africa into a new era, whereby reconnecting the motherland to the diaspora and creating a new future. So growing up, under those foundations and with that history as part of me, I have, throughout my life, I have always been searching for new ways and opportunities to not only uh, find my identity as an African, but also connect with our identity as it has manifested in other places. So through music, the music. I mean, I will hear. I've told a few stories. One time, I remember I was doing a concert in Miami, and it was my style of music is called Afro Roots. So Afro Roots is literally fusing traditional African music with contemporary styles like reggae, soca, hip hop, and everything. So I was doing a concert there, and then that night the promoter told me that I want to surprise you. You got to come with me. I'm taking you to a club. So he took me to this club. I literally walked in and I heard these rhythms, traditional rhythms, that were literally exactly like me walking into a traditional African event, cultural event. The bell patterns were the same. The tonality of the call and response of the men and women, the community aspect of music was the same. The instruments were literally the same. So I started like melodies were the same, but then I realized that the language was Spanish. The language was not our traditional language, but then the harmonies and melodies were all the same. And I was like, "What is this? This is traditional African music." And he's like, "Well, this group is from Cuba." So all of a sudden, I really recognized that that aspect of us is still alive, and that has been the seed that has kept us thriving. Although we geographically we've not been reconnected, historically we've not been reconnected, and then also through current states of politics and all of that too, we've been kept far apart. But the music and the culture and the essence of who we are has actually magnified and thrived in all these places. And as we find our way towards each other, we see these as new signposts that helped us to forge a new connection towards each other. So for me, that was kind of my experience in terms of finding myself, knowing myself as a Ghanaian, knowing myself as a Pan-Africanist, studying, the works of our, forebears like Kwame Ture, Marcus Garvey, Haile Selassie, Kwame Nkrumah, and all the new ones and the musical ones like Bob Marley, Fela Kuti and all of that. But then as a new generation artist too, who walks that path too, I found that truth myself too. And I think that is what Pan-African solidarity is. It's about finding ourselves and completing that whole. Because sometimes we think that we lost something, but I feel that no matter what cards history dealt us, we have an opportunity to reconnect it and create that whole Sankofa energy, as we say in Ghana, that in order to move forward, you have to go back and use the past as a means to propel yourself forward. So for me, that is how I see it.
Yes, absolutely. So we lost Matthew again. So I'm going to go to Wendell from the Republic of Belmont.
Yeah.
To share with us his experience of Pan-African solidarity.
Yeah, well, thank you all very much for the opportunity. It's a great panel, great topic. From the Republic of Belmont, for me, that I guess that was my grounding. And I always say I took my grounded for granted for a large part of my growing up and my existence. But in hindsight, my grounding is what affords me to be here having this chat with you today. And through the cultural forms, through growing up in Belmont and being exposed to the carnival from the time I know myself, steel pans on every corner. When I heard that interpretation of failure on the pan, I know that arrangement. I know it note for note. It's in my DNA. And I was waiting for the da 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 da. As I don't know when I first heard that, but it's never left my consciousness. Um, and for me, this whole idea of Pan African solidarity, if I use myself as a living example, is about coming into that consciousness more and more and actively going in search of, the information and the vibrations to reinforce that sense of self that was not reinforced in the education system or at home in the little aspirant brown skin family that I was a part of, even though we grew up amidst all of this stuff. Um, to come into the knowledge that the author of Pan-Africanism is a Trinidadian, in the 1800s is mind-blowing. And it changes your life. Just that knowledge changes you. And CLR James, George Padmore, I had the opportunity to go to a Calypso conference in Sao Paulo, of all places. And the lead authority on Calypso at the time was a professor from Nigeria. And that is where I discovered the connection between Trinidad and Kitchener and Ghana and Ghana's independence. We give all the alternate independence song. Coming from Belmont, as you say, and coming to the awareness that Kwame Ture was just down the road from where I grew up. David Rudder is a huge inspiration and an influence. So for me, it's those living examples. This man behind here, Lancelot Lane, for me was a living example of Pan-Africanism. So I just try to take that on board. So there's the big Pan-Africanism, the big P, as they say, which is the political statement, Henry Sylvester Williams, George Padmore, CLR James, all these guys. But I also learned recently that there's a small P Pan-Africanism, which is the music, the art, the culture, the exchange that's happening despite whatever disconnections, despite whatever lack of consciousness there is. And Juve, getting involved in Carnival specifically, but not just Carnival. I was involved with Big Mass for years, but I didn't get that connection to the thing that I got when I got into Juve consciously. I was introduced to Juve as a 9-year-old, and it blew my mind, and I wanted that experience. It was strange, dark, dangerous, intriguing. It had some blood in it. It had some rum in it. It had plenty fire in it, and I couldn't wait to get back in that. So the good fortune to have a Juve band that's been running for so long and fighting hard to insist that in the midst of all the vibrations and going this way and going that way, we still maintain some kind of a purity and consciousness of why we do Juve. One of the first things I had to do was go and find out what is this Juve thing that we're doing. It was fun, but I knew it had to be more than fun, because why all these tens and thousands of hundreds of thousands of people come out and give themselves over to this thing? And working closely with Laventry Rhythm Section over the years, working closely with Redman and the natural culture drummers who grew up just down the street from me in Belmont, has brought out in me more and more that sense of our African rootedness, our African retention in the expression and the vibrations of the music, as you say, from the griot to the Kaisonian to the Rapsoman. And I just try to bring as much of that into the thing as I can, because as I discover it, I can't help but want to share it. And for me, the problem we have is the ignorance. The ignorance that's separating us all. The vibration is doing its thing. We need to just come on board with it.
And connect with the knowledge, the source of the knowledge.
Yeah,
so let's see if we can get a comment from our brother Matthew. Oh, go on again. Oh boy. So we have to move on. But speaking of that idea of Africa to the diaspora and back, we're going to listen to another piece of music which puts light on a country that gained independence as the first Black republic, defeating the French army, etc., etc., and for which, as the bard, who we are very fortunate to have with us today, David Michael Rudder, says in his song, they still pay the price. So let's listen to this next piece of music, which talks again about Africa to the diaspora and back. And I want to bring in David to talk a little bit about that song. I mean, what was the inspiration for that song, and how was it received, particularly at a time when public fetes was so crucial and important to our lives and our consciousness, and bands like Charlie's Roots would be taking part and engaging with those spaces? Ooh. I think David is having some connection issues. So, for me,
There he is.
He's here. He's here. Unmute David.
Hello?
You need to unmute.
Yeah, mic is muted, David.
I don't think he can hear you. David, you have to
Hi,
unmute.
everyone.
Oh no, you have to switch
Can you
it.
hear me?
I can hear you, Matthew. Okay, so let's
Okay,
hear
so
Matthew in the
I'm so
meantime.
sorry. My internet is kind of bad, but yeah, I'll say something, and I'm
Yeah.
enjoying the conversation. It's an interesting one, and I'm originally from Zambia, but I live in the US.
Go ahead.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead. There's a delay.
Okay, so hopefully you can hear me.
Yes, we're
Yeah.
hearing you.
Oh, you
Yeah.
can't hear me.
Yes,
We
we
can
can
hear
hear
you.
We can hear you.
Okay, my sound settings here are saying, looking at the settings, it looks like I'm okay. Like you should be able to
Yeah.
hear me. I can't. I
Yes,
don't know
yes,
why.
yes. Go ahead.
We are hearing you.
Yeah, he's waiting for the delay.
Oh,
It's like at least 10 seconds
that's
after.
a big delay.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the technology is imperfect. The drum will reach. The drum will reach. The StreamYard technology has not kept up with drum technology, which has been with us for centuries, which was able to reach us across the waters and
Yes.
in our blood. But we know that our brother is in his heart, he is with us, and we are so thankful for him for trying to reach out and for trying to be part of this conversation. But to go back into the conversation specifically about songs like Haiti, I'm Sorry, David talks in the song, he says, when there is anguish in Port-au-Prince, it's still Africa crying, right? Just a couple months ago, we had a situation where a boat was found with a bunch of bodies. And these were the bodies of people who were coming from Mauritania. And we think that Africa is very far away, but the reality is that there are certain streams that you can take, which will take you to the Caribbean and take you to South America. And these streams have been explored and used for more centuries than even Columbus and those other marauders would care to know and understand. So David is back with us and he's not on mute anymore. So let's see if we can get to hear from him about the song Haiti and how it was received in its time.
It's it was actually created in one night in New York City, I took a cab home from with a friend of mine, and when we arrived at the destination, the guy said that'll be $4, but normally that trip will cost about $3. So my partners had to get on and say, but all Haitians always want more, kind of thing. So it kind of hit me, I say, do you know the history of Haiti? And he said, I don't care about that, I find that charge too much and thing, So that kind of triggered the idea in my head to write a song, I never thought that the song would take on that kind of life of its own, because even with today's what is happening right now in Haiti today, when there is anguish in Port-au-Prince, it's still Africa crying. We're out in fires in faraway places where our neighbors are burning. The middle passage is gone. So how come overcrowded boats still haunt our lives? I refuse to believe that we good people would forever turn our hearts and our eyes away. I'm getting people calling and saying, I'm hearing your song all over the place today. And it's one of the things, there are lots of songs I write, I don't want to hear them anymore. Like, I wish they would go away, because by going away, it would free up the spirit it would free up my spirit. Because I would feel like this song has done something. And it has, in a sense, it has. Because it's still in a sense, the mouthpiece of a lot of people across the diaspora in terms of how we treat Haiti, how we operate, in this world of selfishness and this me world, No one is ever saying David and I again. It's me and David, It starts with the pattern of the language itself, and the fact that today, if the song could help us to shift the vibration into a positive, then by all means. But I still feel sad every time I say we have to play this song again. It's kind of a mixed emotion thing.
Mm-hmm. And certainly, the question for me is, how do we shift as Wenda was saying, the big P to the small P, which is the music, the arts and stuff, into the big P, which would be a sort of political will by people like CARICOM, by by individual governments, to not just pay lip service or not just wait for somebody else to deal with it, some bigger oppressive power to the north, not calling any names, to deal with it, rather than us banding together as a region and looking at Haiti as an answer to a lot of questions that we have, but also that we can give answers to as well. I think that that's my concern the most. How do we move from the small P to the big P? But maybe that's outside our scope.
I was struck by the example that triggered the song, because it was such casually callous dismissal of I don't know and I don't want to know. Mm-hmm. And out of that came such a phenomenal song, which continues to, because when I heard the news the other day, the first thing that came to mind was Haiti, I'm sorry. And the first thing I tried to do was understand what's going on in Haiti. And that line says, we misunderstood you and we continue to misunderstand Haiti. And try to make sense of what's going on there. You will lose a few, you'll get some more gray hairs. But it is something that we need to chat, is a challenge we have to confront. And even if it has to start with the music as the thing that tickling you and ninging you, so be it.
Well,
I was struck also by the fact.
Yes, sorry. David, go ahead.
I was just struck by the fact that the Spanish-speaking Caribbean doesn't have a clue what's going on in the English-speaking Caribbean or the French-speaking Caribbean. Everybody sort of focus on their little space and that's it. It's so strange now that the people that they held for this crime are Spanish-speaking, mm-hmm. who might probably have no idea who Haiti is, what Haiti is about. Mm-hmm. They're doing a work, putting on a work, and a lot of that is there's a certain kind of callousness about it, just putting a work down. that has kind of taken over the space, and how do we reclaim that first of all? I have another song about Haiti called Man on the Hill, the men on the hill, and the people who run the commanding heights of this society, all the money that comes in, they control, and it doesn't reach the man on the ground. But the men on the hill, how we deal with them, how do we take this goodwill and transform it into something for the people themselves, and not just as we say in Trinidad, a cheap kind of way, but
Yeah.
a long and sustained development plan, and how do we harness these men on the hill? That's the next question.
I also, just to chip in on the Haiti, what's going on in Haiti too, I mean, I think it reflects on the whole Pan-African solidarity thing that we're talking about right now. Because these are our brothers and sisters, regardless of geography. Once we start seeing a new vision of our identity, that our identity is not necessarily you being Trinidadian, Haitians and all of that, but a bigger concept of Africa, and a bigger concept of the mother, the bigger concept of where we all came from. I think that Haiti also represents historically, one of the first in terms of Black people reclaiming their own power, politics, and everything into their own hands. And I think that the powers that have been involved in molding all of us from 16th century, molding Africa, the Caribbean, and all of that, and culturally isolating us with language and and geography and all of that. That was something that throughout history has never been allowed to succeed as a beacon for other African and Black people to, because Haitians through a revolutionary war wrested power by themselves, and that was something that up till now there is a lot being paid. So a lot being paid for that move by Black people to take back their own power. So I think that we always have to look at it in the bigger concept of what the symbolism of that means, and not in terms of the immediate knowledge of what is going on. It's that there is, as Public Enemy will say, and without also excuse my my white friend, there's also a fear of a Black planet going on.
Yeah.
And we have to come to terms with that. We have to come to terms that our strength in building that unity among us is also perceived in other places as a threat. So, I mean, as our, from Kwame Nkrumah to all our, founding fathers who tried, Kwame Nkrumah wanted to unite Africa. His vision was not just Ghana. He saw Ghana as a stepping stone. He was allowed to unite Ghana, but when he started, he was almost there bringing Africa together. That was when the alarm bells went off, because it was manifestation of the Garveyite philosophy of us coming, being masters of our own destiny, being in control of our resources, being in control of how we connect to our brothers and sisters, putting back the original history. I call it that, we rip the shreds, now we resew, we resew the threads back into the original cloth, which is in terms of bringing. So we should see Haiti as a continuance of that struggle to be masters of our own destiny and to speak clearly in our own language and empathize with them, and all of us give the solidarity, the healing, the support, not only as Caribbean, but I'm also sometimes very, sad about that. African leadership, when things are happening in the diaspora, they don't speak up about it. There's a disconnect. They see it, and my brother, sometimes I go on the ground. I was like, "Do you know what's going on?" Everybody's like, "Oh no, that's Brazil." That's so that mentality is still that slavish mentality of boundaries is well ingrained into our mindset, and I think that we need to break away from that and start seeing ourselves that what happens in Haiti, what happens in Trinidad, is what happens in Africa, happens to all of us. And I think if we start having that mindset that is the beginning of the new concept of Pan-Africanism, because I don't think that it was invented as a historic relic for a museum back in the day, but it's a active way of engaging the world. And that is how we will build our strength and also be able to support and help all of humanity to thrive, because I don't see as Black people rising as a threat to anybody. We are the roots of the tree. And without the strength of the roots, no matter how strong the branches grow or the stems and things, it's not going to be steady. So our stability and our strength is important for all of humanity.
I want to pick up on a comment that David made. The idea that if you speak Spanish or French, you don't know what's going on in the English-speaking world and vice versa. And that is a deliberate vestige. And getting on my soapbox is what I've termed post-colonial disorder. And it is a psychosis, it's a pathology that we in the diaspora and on the continent suffer from. Is a result of the divide and conquer. And it keeps us isolated. It keeps us from that unity that you talk about. When we recognize that we outnumber everybody. If you count the continent and the diaspora, we outnumber a whole lot of people. They don't like that. They're afraid of that. And we've internalized it so that I keep in my little space and you keep your little space over there. And we do it with our music as well. You know. If you we're opening up a bit now. Now soca has gone regional. So we can look at people singing soca and we won't say, well, you're not Trinidadian, how dare you sing soca? That must be something else. It's gone regional, it's been regional for a while. Calypso too, but we don't really talk about it. You know, even though you will find Calypso in every freaking island, regardless of language. We don't talk about Calypso as a Caribbean-wide phenomenon. When we talk about Calypso in seminars, in books, we talk in Trinidad and Tobago. More Trinidad than Tobago even.
And certainly Calypso and soca start to take on the feel and flavor of the different islands that you find them in. So you have the Dennery segment in St. Lucia, you have the Bouillon in Dominica, which we sort of put a blanket statement as being soca, but of course there is subtlety and nuance. And I think that a similar thing happened in the 90s when there was this, when there was a Kiss Kitty Caravan, and you had this emergence of a whole set of different types of music. Again, after the emergence of a whole different set of music in the 70s in Trinidad, you had this emergence of all sorts of things that were kind of dancehallish, kind of hip-hop-ish. So you have records called Raga Bengi and, you know, all sorts of interesting things because at the core, you have the very West African elements of the storytelling, the griot, the delivering of a history of a story in a particular format. And so, you know, you can't really say that this thing is reggae and this thing is soca and this thing is, it has to be identified within the context of diaspora music, which means so much to us in all of these different ways. So to say that, I'm going to introduce another piece of music now, which sort of speaks to what we were just talking about, this whole question of demarcation and separation, and how when the music is being made, sometimes those separations make no sense. So let's listen to our next piece of music, which comes from another one of our panelists, Rocky Dawuni, Africa Reggae Fever. DJ.
common man's time now to make it. Oh, pay attention, my people, all over the nation. Hope you have a minute to listen to what I have to say. Redemption through music, my only intention. Bringing hope to places while the leaders laugh and play. From Accra to Soweto, all I hear is more fire. Youth in the ghetto now desire more fire. Music on the radio, don't take them no. Now desire more fire. Music on the radio, don't take them no higher. It's too late, none of them can stop us now. African reggae fever, catch it, catch it. There will be no cure when you get it. Hey, you Mr. DJ, play it, spread it. It is the common man's time now to make it. From Accra down to Lagos to Addis Ababa. It is the common man's time now to make it. Oh mama, oh papa, come let's face reality. Africa and diaspora must stand in unity. So gather, don't scatter, fulfill the Bible prophecy. Out of many come together as one. They've gone down all our heroes in a cold-blooded murder. Try to stop this movement from growing much further. Jaja give us power to cross every border. Hey DJ, press rewind and come again. African reggae fever, catch it, catch it. There will be no cure when you get it. Hey you Mr. DJ, play it, spread it. It is the common man's time now to make it. This one is for the rockets from Accra to Kingston.
Big tune from Rocky Downey. Bringing together so many things. I mean, that video was just like such a coming together of diaspora symbology. So we had capoeira, we had which comes from the
Brazil.
the resistance in Brazil. We had Ghanaian singing on a reggae beat.
Yeah.
There was so much.
Lady Smith.
Lady Smith, Black Mombazo was there.
And then
It started. Yeah,
And it was
South
African,
Yes. And it
So
was the
many
national
things.
anthem of South Africa too. That was there.
Yes.
In Kosisi Kalele. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that I mean, just quickly to interject, the idea of this song was to show that, geography is only a state of mind, and through culture and music, we can overcome all these borders that is just self-made borders towards each other and to ourselves. Reggae music was popularized by our own brothers and sisters, genetic brothers and sisters. So when we hear it, we don't hear it as other people hear it. We hear it deeply. When I hear, soca, I hear it deeply. As an African, I connect to the African aspects of it, not in terms of the other aspect of it. It speaks to my soul, So this is the whole thing that we're talking about, like in this, trying to use imagery, visuals, and also pop culture to show that the diaspora and Africa, is one, and even lyrically really access, talking about that, and then talking about the movement, a new movement that once we make this movement known, we're still going to have people who don't feel that. They see the power that lies in this movement. And that's the thing about the song, and it starts with Lady Smith, Black Mombazo, singing the freedom song that was South Africa's liberation song to also drive this point. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, so that brings us more into our question, which is about music that plays a critical role in building consciousness, raising awareness, and mobilizing the masses with respect to revolutionary change. And certainly, when we talk about South Africa, I remember every single protest that I ever saw from South Africa during apartheid era, people were singing and dancing.
Yeah.
Before before the fight started, there was always the music that went with it. And I think also about, of course, the Gael, the where before you enter the ring, you go by the drum, you call for the song that appeals the most to your spirit, and then you go into battle. And so that idea of the music being a central part of building that revolutionary spirit, and we have many stories of people like Bob Marley performing in Zimbabwe. Also, Brother Valentino performing in Zimbabwe. I mean, people love their Zimbabwe. There were so many songs that were sung about the movement towards freedom in Zimbabwe, and that was part of the rallying cry of that movement. You have, of course, we go back to Kitchener and his song, which was part of the movement towards independence for Ghana. And then you also have Fela Anikulapo Kuti, who was, he said it in an interview. He said music is a weapon. He said we can't sing about love and soup and thing. We have to sing about revolution, because that's what our society needs. That is where we are at this point. And so we have three musicians here, and I would like to bring in Wendell here to talk about the power of the word and the rhythm of the word, and how Rapso music became a sort of revolutionizing of Calypso.
Right. Well, I heard an interview with Santana some time ago, and they asked him what kind of music he plays. He says African music. So we make African music. That's what we do in this side of the world, and I'm struck by the power of that. I'm struck by the fact that despite all the attempts at suppressing and oppressing and distorting, the power of the music endures. So that's something that I believe in. I'm an advocate of Rapso. Lancelot Lane is the man who invented the form without calling it that, but Brother Resistance and the network Rapso Rhythm Band, they were the ones that brought that sense of a consciousness to it and what Rapso was about. But Lancelot Lane said something fundamental, which is knowledge of self and belief in self as the beginning points. And I can't stress enough the importance of filling that void with the knowledge of self. And then even after some of us have been educated, we have to get past the education that we've been educated and get to a deeper understanding of what that means. Taylor said music is a weapon. Rapso is a militant stance. Juve is a mad, crazy place. So our attitude has always been to bring more fire to it. I grew up watching Mr. Rudder perform, shake the place down with solid vibes, not no bacchanal. Even when he was singing bacchanal, it was solid, grounded vibes. He could have sing a bacchanal 100 and we'd ask for more. That's Ileife, like me to understand all those things in the midst of the popular expression. And I always tell my fellow artists, why we keep dumbing down the thing, why we keep missing the opportunity, why we only looking to entertain and sing stupidness. I just get a little ignorant, so I tend to stay in my corner. Music is so powerful and so potent, and that's probably just as Rocky was saying as regards Haiti, it's the same thing. There are agendas at play. There are people who don't want people to tap into their power. It serves them, it suits them. There are people who, when hip hop was growing conscious, they decide to push gangster rap. That's where they decide to spend their money. We have a situation in Trinidad and Tobago in the ground where we have beautiful young men and women who have things to say, but they choose to say it in the form of Trinidad, which is an expression that I'm not trying to censor. It is what it is, but I would want to encourage the exponents of the form to understand we cannot celebrate death and hope that out of it cometh good. Even if around you is surrounded by death, you have to take another view as a poet, as an artist. You have to take a higher ground. And you know, that's what I see coming out in that video from Rocky. He's making a conscious statement, you know, look at me. It all fits, it all belongs. So yeah, for me, music is critical, it's pivotal, and there's a lot of work to be done there, because there are people who are making the statements and saying it, but they're not getting the space, and it's not catching the ears of those who need to hear it most in many scenarios.
Yeah. So we have a question from our audience. Sharon Bradshaw, who's watching on Facebook, wants to know, what is the role of collaborations among musicians across the diaspora in giving meaning to Pan-Africanism?
I think that collaboration it's a great means by which we can create that cultural connection that we always seeking, you know, because the music, when you do an original form of music, let's say, to go back a little bit back in history, when I was growing up, I grew up in like my father came from a traditional, you know, African family, but he was also in the military, Ghanaian military. So I grew up in like a very controlled environment. But at that time, the Ghanaian military was part of the United Nations peacekeeping forces. So what they used to do is that they used to be stationed in the border between Egypt and Israel. And because of that, they used to get music that was coming, all the fresh music that was coming out from America. So when they came back, they brought all this new music into the barracks. So we were a little bit one step ahead of the music that was playing on the radio in Ghana. We were hearing things because we didn't have the internet and all of those around that time to be able to act. So if there's maybe a release by Kitchener or anybody, it has to travel all across those geography and gatekeepers and come back. That was how we connected with the music. But now with the internet, with everybody hearing in real time the music, it has also elevated a new culture of collaboration, whereby you're playing a certain style or you're from a different geographic region, you can instantly be able to have a rapport and be like, okay, here is a track that I'm doing. Can you work on that? So I think that it has created an opportunity, a new opportunity. I don't think we've explored the potential well, because we are only seeing a product of something that is happening naturally. You know, artists like, even when we take Wizkid with Drake, you know, that really started bringing Afrobeat like really into the mainstream. And even before that, you know, you had and then all of a sudden, you know, a lot of Black American artists saw the potential to go and collaborate with, you know, and then also there's like African artists collaborating with Jamaican artists, you know, which never really used to happen during the old paradigm. But now, you know, one will listen to somebody on the internet, you know, send him a message, you know, iMessage, and they'd be like, oh, I like your track. Okay, can we do a track together? And then it happens. So I feel that that spirit of collaboration is also allowing us to be able to engage with each other in terms of the cultural aspect of it, the music, and being exposed to music that is happening also in the diaspora in real time. You know, I have a quick story. I mean, I'm not going to be long about it. A quick story that, so even this collaborative effort, me, myself, when I left Ghana, you know, to start off my, you know, after university, you know, I always wanted to be a musician. After university, you know, there was no opportunities in Ghana for what I was trying to do. So I traveled to America to learn the music business. And the first job I got to work was to intern for a record label. And at that time was when the record label had signed Machel Montano, you know, Delicious Vinyl. So they found an African boy who was musically inclined, who was also a musician, but who also wanted to learn the music and had studied the American system in terms of the calling. Like, you know, we have a perfect artist that we just signed and we're trying to formulate a marketing strategy for this artist. So I did the college promotion for Machel's Come Dig It, you know, and it was also all part of, I identify with this musical style. And late, you know, several years later, me and Machel, you know, we became friends during that time. But after I left as a guy who was trying to make a career and I developed a career for myself, we met as artists, and then we started talking about this whole thing that although it wasn't a direct collaboration, but it was also empathizing with each other and working to elevate each other. And I feel that that has also helped in pushing the overall agenda forward. And of course, he takes credit for investing in my music. And, it's like, I'm the guy that made your music, no matter what you think. I'm like, okay, I won't argue about that.
But I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned Marshall, because he is actually one of the people that you can identify in Trinidad who has always reached out to the diaspora in particular ways, always collaborating, and also with artists locally in terms of elder artists, Andre Tanker, this one, that Minshall, all sorts of people to bring the music to a different point. And so it's interesting that you mentioned that Marshall connection.
Yes.
And I don't know if anybody...
He was in Ghana and we saw each other.
He was in Ghana.
We've been talking about collaborating, creating, bringing all of this into a tangible, apart from the conversations we have to create. It's almost like the concept of the South-South cooperation, We can create we can build economic cooperation, prosperity, collaborations in both from healthcare to agriculture to everything, if we build a cultural foundation as the basis of it. So I believe that even prosperity of our people, both within and without, can be achieved if we start building tangible systems that are based upon this cultural connection. Yes.
I also feel like if we were to look at, say, the Francophone experience, we would see a different story, because I think that from the 70s and 80s, there was interaction going on between the artists who were from Guadeloupe and Martinique and the artists who were in France, from Cote d'Ivoire and Senegal, etc., etc. So now you have all of these really interesting collaborations between Angelique Kidjo and this one, and so it's really interesting how language spaces make for different kinds of collaboration and interaction. If you also look at places like Angola and Cape Verde, they have a very interesting interaction with Portugal and with the dance music that is now coming out and taking over the dance music scene in Europe. So, I mean, you're just as likely to hear Buraka Son Sistema in a dance in Paris as you are to hear Kassav, as you are to hear Franco, as you are to hear any of these people, Magic System, I think in terms of language lines, there's a different kind of collaboration going on. And when we go to places like London, you see that the African musicians and artists are interacting with the African musicians and artists from the continent are interacting with the African musicians and artists who are second generation Caribbean in a completely different way, and creating all sorts of hybrids like funky house and drum and bass, garage, all of those things are coming out of, Stormzy, just think about Stormzy is also like the face of grime. He's also a Ghanaian.
Yeah.
We have all of these permutations and manifestations of African diaspora music happening, and we just have to look for them. And so that brings us to our next piece of music, which is really an example and an example of that collaboration that we're talking about. DJ, hit me.
Yeah. coming, G-Wagon, all the Bentley, the girl them riding with me. I know fit, die for nothing. My brother, what he coming, G-Wagon, all the Bentley, the girl them riding with me. I know fit, die for nothing. I make you not say anything when you do, they must commentate. So anything where they do, or they try to, they do it my way. Plenty so far where we face, just to make sure money there. For my people, they go say, I know one fight, I know one die, I know one payment, I want enjoy, I want top life, I want buy motor, I want build house, I still want turn up. Tell me, my brother, what it gonna be? G-Wagon, all the Bentley, the girl them riding with me. I know fit, die for nothing. My brother, what it gonna be? G-Wagon, all the Bentley, the girl them riding with me. I know fit, different things them happening, schemes and packaging. In a one night for shows, I'm juggling, flow like the ocean, my boat I'm paddling. Shout out Gina Bella, that's my bro, my family, frozen things. When it comes to money, I dey concentrate. Make I tell you straight, you are not my mate. If you be commissioner, be head of state. But my people, them go say, I know one buy, I know one die, I know one payment, I want enjoy, I want top life, I want buy motor, I want build house, I still want turn up. Tell me, my brother, what it gonna be? G-Wagon, all the Bentley, the girl them riding with me. I know fit, die for nothing. My brother, what it gonna be? G-Wagon, all the Bentley, the girl them riding with me. I know fit, oh blow up now, yeah, 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 yeah.
Nice.
One X.
Big tune, big tune.
I'll give you a joke.
Yes, David, give me the joke.
My kids were playing that one day, and I didn't say anything. After they finished, I put on Fela and Sorrows and Blood. And they said, but Daddy, they say the same thing. I said, that is the original. That is the original right there.
Yes.
You know?
Exactly.
And that is the great thing about this, how the music connects, you know? I don't know if people even know that, but one of Fela's best friends was Lord Superior. You know? And if you listen to some of Superior's music, you'll swear it's Fela you're listening to. You know? And it's just music is such a magical force, you know. I remember my children's doctor, when I first took the kids, he was a very stoic gentleman, and he said, "I know that name, David Rudder. You are the David Rudder?" I say, "Well, what is that? Maybe." He said, "But you have this." When we were in the bush in South Africa with the ANC fighting, in the night we would listen to your songs. I said, "What?" Then I remembered my lawyer in London was also the ANC's lawyer, so he used to take my music and give it to the ANC. So you know, so you never know in this world when you make a statement through music, where it will take you, where it will take people, and how it affects them. You know, but it's great to see the generations coming. They're actually rediscovering past vibrations and not even knowing it.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
I was watching a documentary on Fela recently, and both his sons, two of his sons were speaking, and they said the music is actually becoming more and more popular now. Young people are now catching up to Fela as if like first time. You know? But I want to give a joke. David, I never been to Africa, but one night I went to a show that David put on called Down at the Shibine, and you had to have a passport.
Ooh, yes. You had to have a pass. I think I still have it.
And he took us on a musical journey.
Yeah.
Through the whole scenario in South Africa. That was one of the most beautiful experiences of my life. And that's the power of the music, you know, to take you, transport you, immerse you in the whole scene, so you get a whole different appreciation and understanding, not just intellectually, but viscerally. So, yeah, man, more power.
And certainly, I mean, like the idea of a shebeen is what I'm constantly trying to recreate wherever I am. When I want to have a party,
Yeah.
it's
I'm
like
constantly trying to
shebeen,
recreate
and
Fela's shrine.
yeah.
I'm constantly
It's
trying to
always
create Fela's shrine.
yeah, exactly. I
I
mean,
believe in the yard and the
that
shrine and that.
shrine sense that, where people could just go and be
Yeah.
with the music, dance out all their frustrations. As Bob Marley says, forget your troubles and dance. Forget your sorrows and dance. Everything. You just put everything into the music. And for me, when I hear fella wail sometimes, also Shadow, Shadow has this way of wailing in his music that even Franco, you say
But
that is just in that little piece of thing. You hear so much pain. You hear and you can immediately understand what this artist is talking about. To say nothing of people like Nina Simone, who really has articulated Black woman pain in a way that I don't think that maybe Ella Andel is the only other person that I could see reaching those heights of dragging something from deep within our souls and throwing it back for us and saying, look you there.
but another thing too is how much too of the music too that is coming from the diaspora, from the Lord Kitcheners, the David Rathers, the Mighty Sparrows, that has also was part of African music too. So sometimes you'll be hearing Fela and all of them African artists, and it's not necessarily we like something that is coming, it's something that we are also learning from our brothers and sisters too in the diaspora and integrating it right back to what we have and creating something new. So the and just this takes me to the importance of soca and how not only its power and its influence both within Africa, but I had an opportunity. I was on tour and I was doing a concert in Israel, and right before the show, we were rehearsing at this really really incredible place, and there was like a older gentleman who was sitting in the corner just watching everything go on. And at one point after the rehearsal, I went and sat next to him and I struck a conversation. So we were chatting, and he's like, "Well, I really like the melodies in your songs and stuff, but if you really want to take things a notch up, you should be listening to soca. You should be listening to Lord Kitchener. You should be listening to Shadow. You should be listening to Mighty Sparrow. These guys were making melodies that have been instrumental in a lot of big hits in the West. And I found out that this man was none other than Seymour Stein. Seymour Stein is run Spire Records and was one of the biggest music executives. And he was sitting right there, and I had this conversation with him. So right afterwards, when I came back home, I literally bought every, like for 2 months, all I listened to was I already knew it, but it really refreshed my perspective as a musician on a journey to reconnect to about the treasure trove of incredible, amazing music too that is coming back to the continent and being something too that we are also building upon. So big ups to those foundation fathers and figures too that are also inspiring back at home.
Absolutely.
It's
I
funny,
want to bring Taylor in here.
I wanted to pick up on Nina Simone and the power of music. And what always struck me about Nina Simone, and I'll expand it, she can bring out the deepest sorrow, mingle it with happiness at the same time. That ego saying where one thing stands, something else stands. And she used to do that a lot. When you listen to Mood Indigo, she's singing a serious blues song, but you're dancing because it's so lively and so it moves you. And a lot of our popular music, without the interference of commercialism, a lot of our popular music started with that. It was simultaneously an expression of pain and an expression of joy. I would say it's two revolutions going on at once. So we have the big P political revolution, and we're saying, we have no water, we have no this, agitating for freedom. But we also have this revolution where we are celebrating our being, just being, and how you can't say I'm not human because look at me, I'm human. And there's a level of joy in that people didn't understand. And for the most part, they dismissed our popular music because look at all these things going on, and you're talking about a wine and a jam, or you're talking about a party. But that was also revolutionary because, especially when in a Trinidad context, you were talking about a people who were denied their humanity. And this is when I'm expressing humanity with a level of joy that your oppression could never take away.
Actually, yeah. I mean, I could think about a few songs that come to mind, like Shadow, A Feeling to Party, especially that part where he says, oi, 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 oi. Like you could hear this man who's tired, but he's going to take his last bit of energy and go to a fete and dance whole night and wake up the next day feeling re-energized.
There's a point coming down to the tail of that song where he says, I feel the rock.
Yes.
And where he says, I feel the rock. It's like, wow, okay.
Yeah.
Shadow was the best. Oh God, Shadow.
It's a lot. Also, I mean, you think about songs like Water No Get Enemy, where, fella is showing me, how much water is a destroyer, but also, yes, if water kill your child, you still have to use water to wash your child's body for burial. We are nothing without water. And then you have this refrain that comes from nowhere after like 10 minutes of music. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh yes, water, and then all of a sudden everybody just go on clear. Yeah. I mean, I also find that particularly in ritual music, we have that element as well, and you see that in a lot of son and salsa and things. So the song starts off very moderate, etc. Like when you go to a Orisha feast or some kind of celebration like that, and it always starts off, very moderate, and then all of a sudden it reaches to that point where the song is sung that the spirits love the most. And the drummer becomes into it. The drummer started hit the drum like his life depended on it. And woman started roll on the ground. And you see that in a soca fete too. You see that exact same kind of possession and transcendence. And I mean, I was in a party in Accra and I danced so much that I ripped my whole dress off. But I mean, this is the kind of energy that you get when you are with your people.
Yes.
In the music.
In the moment.
In the moment. Yes. Yes.
A girl did the same thing to me. I was telling her that was my first road march, and I split my jester costume doing the vagrant dance. That's what happened. Stick in my mind forever.
Well, I used to go to a David Rudder concert every Christmas night, and we used to go up in front and sing so much that we ended up getting a record deal out of it. So, thank you for the music.
I remember that. Rocky, one thing I'm going to tell you, I did music for a movie in the United States called Wild Orchid. Mm-hmm. And the person who was instrumental in I signed to his label was Timo Stein.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
he wanted to imprint on me that a lot of popular music that was going on, these guys were strategically studying soca music to create pop music.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say about the value of the music is that the value of the music has been used to create multi-million empires that people even don't know the inception point of these creators. So he was just trying to give me he's like, this is what you need to do. If you want to really, go there and study these guys.
Meanwhile, in Trinidad,
an example of that.
Yes.
Exactly. An example of that was the Yeah, when I worked with Ola Tunji and he won Soca Monarch with Ola Ola Ola.
Yeah.
Who did I meet backstage? But Seymour Stein.
Yeah.
He was there
Wow.
backstage, Soca Monarch, taking it in firsthand. And that's not his first trip to Trinidad. He's been dealing with us long time.
Yeah.
He comes almost every year.
And I really appreciate
But the other thing is that
yes. I'm listening, David.
Oh, I was just saying that there's another man who people might know, Van Dyke Parks.
Mm-hmm.
Van Dyke Parks is the man who produced most of Bob Dylan's records, the Beach Boys and the thing, right? And he was hired. He was the first man when Chris Blackwell wanted to try to break Bob as an international artist.
Oh, wow.
They went to Van Dyke Parks, and Van Dyke Parks said, "Why would I produce Bob Marley when I have Mighty Sparrow?" You know, and so that crashed. You know, because the Mighty Sparrow's album More Kaiso, More Sparrow More, that was Van Dyke Parks' production.
All right.
Wow.
Right? Many years later, Bob met him and said, "You see why you should have come and produce me. I'm a big star now." You know, Bob brought me back.
We have another question, which is how important was Festac, which was the Festival of Arts and Culture, which took place in Lagos. How important was that festival to the fusion and cross-sampling of the music genres of Africa and the Caribbean, and for the spreading of the non-conformist lyrics and rhythms of Africa and the diaspora? That's
well, you know, I mean, I don't know if anybody will pick up on this. Personally, I wasn't at FESPAC, but I know of FESPAC, and I know the intentions of it and the vision of it, you know. And I think that it was definitely a model that offered the opportunity for, you know, us to, you know, create an environment where music of the diaspora, films of the diaspora, culture of the diaspora, and also the motherland could be showcased as one whole presentation. And I think that festival, so many people talk about it these days as like, you know, an example of, you know, a model that we could look at, especially even right now, to maybe create more and more of these cultural institutions and cultural events across, you know, the diaspora. You know, I was actually about to get into the whole thing of how do we, all this conversation that we're having, how do we transcend this conversation into tangible institutions that will manifest our intentions? Like festivals in Trinidad, festivals in Ghana, festivals in Nigeria, festivals in Jamaica, festivals in Brazil, that will all follow this model, but at the same time to elevate the cultural connection and cultural treasures that we have together, and use that as a means to bring our people together and also develop the well-being of our people. You know, so I think that Festac was definitely an amazing and incredible milestone in our journey to highlight the culture and the music and the rhythms of Africa and the diaspora. And I hope that we bring concepts like that back again as a new way forward.
Yes, that absolutely brings us into what our final official question is, which is what role can music play in the future to strengthen Pan-African solidarity? And I feel like the idea of the festival is, you know, because yes, you have music that is performed, and, you know, it's now easier for us to access that music digitally. But the idea is that people also want to be together to experience this music. And so, I mean, perhaps what needs to happen is that there needs to be some sort of Festac-like festival which moves across the diaspora. So 1 year it will be hosted in Nigeria. The next year it will be hosted in Port-au-Prince. The next year it will be hosted in Kingston. The next year, and I mean, so that's one practical and active way that we can begin to create those kinds of connections that are permanent, that by setting up something that, and we already have sort of institutions. You have Emancipation Support Committee, you have organizations that are similar in Jamaica, in Ghana. So it's really a matter of all of us coming to the table and sort of putting our minds together and seeing how we can continue to use culture as a way for us to move forward. I don't know if anybody else on the panel has any thoughts on that.
I want to backtrack before we get to the festival. One of the most important things we need to do is dismantle this idea that culture is secondary. We have a very Eurocentric understanding of what development is and what progress is. And it does not include, it does not highlight culture for culture's sake. So the first question, and everybody, I'm not sure if you have this experience in Ghana, but every time you say, I want to do something cultural, the first question they ask you is, how are you making money out of that?
Yeah.
And we have not moved beyond this idea. And it's starting to hurt me more and more. The more you read history, the more you know how we were transported here and why we were transported here. Equating everything to a dollar bill becomes more and more insulting. Yeah. Because we were denied our humanity based on how much money we could make somebody else. We were measured as valuable if we could make money for somebody else. And we must divest ourselves from that idea that it's only worthwhile if it makes money. I was playing around with this idea. I guess to Caribbean Columbus, I wanted to do take a contingent of Trinbagonians to Calabar Carnival, and the idea of a cultural ambassador unit, because it won't be one person, but we are taking our culture out there and sharing with other people. This is who we are. This is what we do. This is our culture, and getting that mingling going on. And there are a lot of festivals out there that already exist that kind of pick up on this Pan-African vibe in various ways. And it might be building on what's out there and expanding it and taking it further. Rocky laughed at me when I said I wanted to go Afrochella, but I'm serious. Afrochella is already there. Afrochella is supposed to be African and African diaspora music meeting in one, I think it's a 5-day festival or something like that. And so all these expressions. And so there are places we can start. There are places that we can, if we can get over this mindset that the importance of culture isn't the dollar sign at the end.
Yeah.
Right? The importance of culture is that idea of keeping yourself, reminding yourself of your humanity, reminding yourself of other people's humanity, and how we are interconnected as human beings because of these shared cultures. And that is more important than if it will make me $100 at the end of the day. I wanted to stress that. It's something we can do. We just have to get out of that mindset that if it don't make $1, it's not important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're definitely right about that, and that is also what is especially even on the ground in Ghana. When all the new festivals, excuse me to say, including Afrochella. The beautiful thing about Afrochella is that it's kind of talks about new culture in terms of the current youth and the current people, what is their culture too, so that's also relevant, especially when sometimes culture is defined as your way of life in your time and in your moment. So, but the history too, culture is also meant to also express the history of a people, your way of life, the value, years and years of sociocultural R&D that has created all these experiences that you can share and bring people into it, so the value of that is immense. But the problem with most of our current institutions is that you have
personas who are at the helm of these who don't, one way or the other, understand that value, and they feel that the only way that culture can be relevant is if you're able to transform culture into immediate dollars. But culture is wealth already in itself. Inalienable wealth lies in culture, you know. And I feel that, you know, some of these conversations and creating successful events too that are pushing real, let's say, traditional African culture. When you go to Afrochella, you see modern culture, but not traditional African culture. Traditional African culture, you might see it when you go to visit, let's say, the Ashanti King's Palace, or you go and a lot of times it's become more showcasey too. Like it's used to show tourists, and then it's put right in the back, but it's not added into the definition of our new identity. That this is something that people will want to connect to. So we are also back at home in Africa. To Africa is also we also struggling with the effects of colonialism, the effects of loss of our identity, the effects of also embracing a very Eurocentric idea of ourselves, and try to work through that in order to project who we are. And just like you will not hear Kwame Ture or Kwame Nkrumah or Marcus Garvey on the radio, or anybody talking about that, or any leader like really pushing their works in terms of waking up the youth so that they understand where they come from and their history. So it's up to us to do more work and bring together a network of people whose intention is to highlight this innate power that we have and connect it all across. At the same time, to embrace the younger people, because most of the younger people sometimes there's a cultural disconnect because of technology, and we need to make that effort to bring them to be part, to include them in this whole new idea. So I totally understand, and that has been a struggle. A lot of times, when you are even doing an event that has Pan-Africanist aspects to it, and everybody will be like, oh, Rocky, the way you guys they think, and all of this one, nobody will come because that one won't make money. We have to get some artists that will come and jump around and have like the current hit to be instead of going for something that has value, innate value, people will go for the low-hanging fruit that they know will make them money. So we too have to figure out how to get funding, sources of funding and support to create events on that level. That's what Festac was a very amazing model, but Festac has to be reinterpreted too for the modern times so that we can be able to engage the youth and everybody to be part of it. So that's my take on it. It's a reality that we struggle with every day, but it does not mean that we cannot overcome it. We just need to start thinking outside the box too. There's an Ashanti proverb, and I always say it, so I'll share it with you. That says that when the hunter learns to shoot without missing, the birds have to learn to fly without perching. So that means that whatever situation you come across, don't make it a stumbling block. Use that as an opportunity to make the adjustment that you need to use that as to take advantage of that, to move forward. So there's a way forward.
I love that. So we're talking about televising the revolution.
Yes.
We have to find a way to televise the revolution, but also to make the revolution live and be relevant to the lives of the young people who perhaps stand to inherit this world of problems, challenges, etc. But with, as Rocky said a little while ago, with that whole notion of Sankofa, looking backwards, but moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
Those two things are really important. So as we talk about revolution, we have a piece of tune to play for you now. DJ, could you hit me with my tune, please?
Yeah. Bless. You ready? Are you ready? Yeah. Are you ready? Yeah. Are you ready for the real revelation? Blow. Children gather round. The ark is coming down, and they go take 10,000 to buy this one. Tell them a revolution coming. Sound your horns, let the walls fall down. One by one we go bring it down. No more might is right, no more wrong and strong. Tell them a revolution coming. The valley of decision, all man have to take the possession, break the chains from this mental prison, and prepare for the real revelation. Don't stand up on the pavement, no waste time to make a statement. Get up, stand up, watch it, check it, say to yourself, this land is mine. From the fire, and together we aspire just to take this damn thing higher, 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 higher. In this quest we never fail, never falter, never tire, never sacrifice your freedom. Fire, fire in your wire. Be free, be free, be free. No, no, nobody can hold me free. Be free, be free. No, no, nobody can hold me free. Party going non-stop. This one for the EMA, and we don't care what nobody say. Just don't stop the party, everything go be irate. Keep the music pumping, people want to keep jumping. Whining on corruption, whining on frustration, whining down oppression. We whining on the system, whining up for unity, whining for opportunity, whining with integrity. We whining for we country. We free, we free, we free. No, no, nobody can hold me free. Let me go, we free. Let me go, we free. Let me go, no, no, nobody can hold me. Let me go, let me go.
Yes, yes. We free. What trouble is this?
We only had one opportunity to do that video because after we do it, the place get dirty and nasty. It was a joy to see, though. I mean, it's so evocative of, as Kayla was saying earlier on, you know, that right to express oneself. And I this ritual that we have, this living ritual, I like to call it, not just a ritual, it's a living ritual because we add life to it every year. We respect certain elements of the tradition, but for me, it's very important that we bring new energy and life to it every time around. And the whole idea of the Juve, Tilla, we was involved in a discussion about that recently. And all of a sudden you realize this thing is precious, this thing is special, this thing means something. And once somebody else starts looking at it a kind of way, you suddenly realize, wait, now there's mines, it's not mines exclusively, but you're welcome to join in, you're welcome to participate. You can't take the whole thing and go with it. Now I feel really privileged to be able to be a Juve man and to add what little bit we could to the vibration, and the knowledge that Juve is a celebration, a literal celebration of our emancipation, for me is so powerful and so necessary we reiterate that year after year after year after year. Even in the midst of all the jumping up and the winding and the bacchanal and the sweetness, the idea that there's an intent to educate and entertain is paramount in our approach to what we do.
Kayla was saying something earlier, which was about that the duality of joy and pain constantly existing within our arts. I don't know, Kayla, you want to go back into that again and talk about your carnival experience?
So let's talk about Kambuli. However you want to spell it. If you want to go the Maureen Warner Lewis version, is a fire procession where you burn your pain. Literally, you light it on fire, burn it, and then you celebrate because you're burning it. If you want to go with the more traditional explanation, that is a reenactment of burning of the canes, again, you have this idea of reenacting a trauma for catharsis. And Carnival traditionally is our space to do that. And I tell people it is a multi-ritualistic space. It's made up of fractal rituals. So all the 5 days, there's a specific ritual and a ritual process going on each 5 days. And we add it all together, and it's supposed to give us that release. Soca is very important in that adoption in soca, when you feel it, right? That living vibration rooted deep within our Caribbean belly, and it's come out through the top of our head. It's literally the Orient Isha reconnecting. And it amazes me whenever I talk about that, people just watch me like a crazy. It's like, but Carnival is a ritual. Carnival is meant to be a ritual. And if you do not treat it as a ritual, it will not serve us the way it's supposed to. And I keep telling people, look at how we don't treat Carnival the way we're supposed to. And look at how strange violence, not violence related to drug trade, not violence related to some personal bacchanal, but strange, arbitrary violence. Because we opening the ritual, we ain't even know we're doing it. We're not closing the ritual. All kind of thing jumping out. And it goes to this whole conversation that we're having now about how do we take our culture and use it as a force for Pan-African solidarity. And one of the things we need to do is understand the culture we're talking about. And I think we are one step behind, because I was thinking about this the other day. Every time I talk about Carnival, I have to convince people Carnival is an African thing. I was like, we've been having this conversation since 1956 with J.D. Elder, at least. We've been having this intellectual conversation. But every time we started, and I tell you Carnival is an African thing, I had one woman tell me that, no, that nakedness and sticking a bone in your nose, that's the African thing. And I almost choked on the food I was eating because I expected more from that person. And that is the sorrow and the joy of it. If we can't recognize the duality of it, because again, we are in what I call our Eurocentric binaryism, is either or, is all or nothing. If one thing is this way, it can't be the other way. And we need to divorce that, move it out of our thinking completely, because we are multiple things at the same time.
Yes.
Indeed, we are.
Yes, we are. So we are coming down to the end of our time now. I just want to give everyone just a quick chance to give any closing comments that you might have, thoughts on solutions to building Pan-African solidarity. David?
Well, all I will say is that, first of all, it was great to be here for this panel. I think that we just have to keep doing what we have to do. Focus on the work ahead. At the end of the day, you plant a seed kind of deep. It may take a little time to reach the surface, but it's always there because it has a great root only there. You know, a lot of what is happening around is very shallow, and that will fall by the wayside because you can just blow a little puff of breeze and it fall over. But I think people who want to deal with the foundation must just keep doing what they're supposed to do. And, you know, I've been doing this since I was over 60 years, right? And I'm still here. So I'm glad to be doing something right, you know, inside of these times where we have this fast food life. Life is a fast food outlet, you know. But we need to come back to the basic Sunday food, you know. And just use it as a metaphor for music is like food, you know. It is the number one food on the planet. And I think that if you stray from it, if you stray from what you're supposed to do, your calling, then you're in trouble. So I'm trying to keep out of trouble.
Well, they say good trouble.
Good trouble.
Good trouble.
Watching the video and then the juve there, you know, rituals have always been part of, you know, our upbringing, especially, you know, coming from a traditional home. You know, every time I go to the family home, there's stuff that you have to do. There's, you know, you have the seers come and then, you know, not to be graphic, but there's chickens, animals, sacrifices, all of these things that are still an integral part of most Africans, even those who are belong to different religious sects that look down on that. So it's a way that we deeply knew to, you look even in the Old Testament, all of this was part of human society, rituals. And I think that watching that, he also showed me the connection that this practice, this insight has also manifested and is being done in so many different ways. So that's why I loved the, the idea that people should look deeply at carnival, that it's a ritual and it needs to be done right in the right way in order for it to bear positive fruits, But all in all, I'm also honored, deeply, deeply honored to have the opportunity to discuss this really important and timely conversation because we just have to look around the world and see that, from the United States to everywhere, Black people are under siege. I just came to America, from Ghana for a few months, and all I see is a lot of homeless people. And what's it called? Most of them are Black. They've lost their jobs through all this current situation, and most of them, this country is stopping to be a home for them. So looking to Africa and connecting to Africa, I feel is one of the most important things right now in this generation to find our identity, because that is the source. That is where all comes from. Although there's been disconnection, all of that. So this conversation is very important and creating something tangible beyond that, I feel is of key importance. So beyond this, I will really advise that, and obviously being excited to see Wendell and also David Rudder, and being a big fan, and all of that. So sharing this opportunity for you is, to connect with you guys is a great honor. But I think that we should keep this group and our conversation together, and maybe this could be some kind of model salon or eventually evolve into a big, a space, let's say in the Trinidad Carnival, that could be created for this idea of cross-cultural African reconnection part of the carnival, and then also an idea too that could be incepted in Ghana, which is right now doing the year of return. So the Ghanaian government is focused on connecting the diaspora and all, back to Africa. So there's this whole thing going on right now. So there could be opportunities for the tourism ministries, cultural ministries, governments, and all of that to be brought to to pay attention to this idea, because I feel that it's an idea whose time has come, and we as a people, it's not back in the days or in the future, but now need to connect each other through our arts, culture, and science, education, food, and find each other in each other. So thank you very much for the opportunity to be part of this incredible group.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, Rocky. Yeah. Well, if I may, I just really think on an absolute honor and a pleasure to be part of the discussion, and I totally agree. It's the beginnings of. We've had many beginnings, right? So I hope we can follow through on the beginnings of this discussion, because what is clear is that this is not a new idea, and we have to take a little stick of fire from all those who came before us and had the bold vision, from Henry Sylvester Williams, through the Marcus Garvey, through George Padmore, Sierra Larry James, through the music in the Sparrow and the Kitchener and the Rudder and the Marley and the Fela and up to the Burna Boy today and Kofi. That part of it, it's there. What we have to work on is the consciousness and bringing that more and more to the forefront of the thing. I read recently an article a couple of years ago where the music industry was shocked to realize that more south to south connections were happening that they were not initiating, and we need to continue in that vein. The idea of Festac and reviving the idea of Festac is all those sort of things we need to continue to explore the possibilities for ourselves and not wait for some other agent to facilitate the whole thing.
Kila, any comment?
First, Rocky, you are invited whenever Emancipation Day happens in a big way again. I hope you find yourself here to partake, whether as an official performer or just an observer. Come, because we do have in Trinidad, we have this opportunity for this kind of Pan-Africanist vibe in Emancipation. And there are festivals all over, and maybe it's to start small and we start making a conscious effort once we find out there's something out there where we could carve a space that we do. Building on the efforts that happened previously. Divorcing ourselves from the idea of, well, to quote completely different genre, nothing to do with this talk, but territorial pissings. Just divorce ourselves from that and really connect.
Patriarchies.
That's the next discussion. A big one, a crucial one.
Because I think that's what keeps us apart. I like you too for research, and you come across people and I listen and go, but that's a calypso, like how. And I'm forgetting his name right now, but he's a Tuareg. So I'm wondering how this nomad with an electric guitar playing a straight calypso riff and a calypso beat on the drums, and you're like, how that happen?
Because we must be getting from him. And
it's been circling and cycling. The West Indian, I was reading, I'm not going to say his name right. Courtney Meko had an article, and he mentioned in the 1880s the West India Regiment, Rifle Regiment, going to Ghana and taking brass music to Ghana. So it's been all.
I also saw a drawing of West India Regiment guy called Lord Nelson. I think his name was Nelson or something like that. But doing a sailor mass in London in the 1820s or something like that. So, it's like...
We're talking about perpetuating.
We've been here before.
I got a video recently from a group called Fulum Miziki or something like that from Kinshasa.
Oh, wow.
I look at the thing, I said, but look at mass.
Yeah.
Look at what I doing for next year, Juve.
Yeah.
Because watch now. Fulum Miziki. Pure mass. Pure mass is a rhythm section from Kinshasa.
Wow. Mass, we know you. We know you. Thank you so much. Kayla, Rocky, Wendell, David, also Matthew, who tried to join us, but he couldn't get through. The technology wasn't working for him. Thank you so much to the Emancipation Support Committee for curating this series as part of their Kwame Ture Memorial Lecture Series. You can join in the next installment of this discussion, which will take place on Sunday, the 18th of July. And the discussion is Film in Post-Colonial Africa and the Diaspora, Contribution to Pan-African Solidarity. So my work done, I'm gonna go and listen to some Pan, because Pan is mine. I'm also a steel Pan-African, you understand?
Yes.
That's where I'm from.
Blessings.
That's where my name is buried. And for those who went to Nigeria for Festac, is the greatest steel band in the whole world, because that's my father band. So, so thank you so much for joining us, and have a great rest of your Sunday. From the Republic of Belmont, I am signing out, telling you to walk good, stay safe, wear your mask, get your vaccine, whatever you need to do to stay safe. Walk good.
Walk good.
You too.
Blessings.
Blessings.
Yeah, it just finished. Let me tell you what we're doing.